Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Redtail Continuing Education webinar. In this session, we'll be talking about Retriever Cloud, but more specifically, we'll be talking about Retriever Cloud for Google. So Retriever Cloud is our calendar and contact sync tool. So this tool will allow you to sync your calendar and contacts from the Redtail CRM to your Outlook 365 calendar and contacts or your Microsoft Exchange calendar and contacts. And as of now, you can now sync the Redtail CRM calendar to your Google calendar and contacts. So today we're talking about Retriever Cloud for Google, which is going to be specifically for those Google calendars and Google contacts. So just to give a little outline for our session today, I'm going to give an introduction about what the Retriever Cloud tool is, maybe why you would want to use this tool, and a couple other pieces of information about it so that you know what you're signing up for or turning on. Next, we'll go over the demo and set up the Retriever Cloud for Google, see how it interacts with the Google Calendar and the Google Contacts, watch the sync happen, and then talk about the details of the sync and what does and does not communicate. Because whenever two platforms are talking, it's like you're translating two different languages. So we're going to translate Redtail into Google and Google back into Redtail via the calendar and contacts. And then we'll look to the future of this tool and see what maybe changes might be coming around, what improvements, and how you all can help shape the future of this tool, because ultimately this product is for you. So the more that we know about what you would like it to do, the better we'll be able to make that happen. So let's jump right into our introduction. What is Retriever Cloud? So Retriever Cloud is our syncing tool. We've named all of our syncing tools Retriever, being the namesake of Redtail. We are very passionate about our golden retrievers, our dogs here. So it was natural to name any kind of syncing tool a retriever name, because it's going to sync information back and forth, just like your retriever is going to retrieve that tennis ball if they're in a good mood. So today we're talking about specifically Retriever Cloud for Google. Now, we do have two other tools available, Retriever Cloud for Outlook 365 and Retriever Cloud for Microsoft Exchange, which tend to be more similar to one another because they're both Microsoft products. But depending on exactly how your email is hosted, it would be a different setup process for a Microsoft Exchange account or an Outlook 365 hosted email address. Now, what does that mean? Whenever we're syncing the calendar, or you might have noticed when you sync the calendar on your phone, that most of the time that calendar it belongs within an email account. So when we're talking about syncing the Redtail calendar from the CRM, we're syncing it usually to an email account. And that email account has a calendar and a contacts portion of it, or folders to it, if you will. So we're syncing your username from the CRM, the calendar that belongs to that username, to a specific email address. And that can be an Outlook 365 email address, a Microsoft Exchange email address, and now it can also be a Google or Gmail address. So very exciting. I'm so excited to show you guys this Google sync and get this going. Now, there are parts of the sync that work better than others because when we are syncing, we are translating Redtail into Google. So you might see that some fields exist in Redtail and some fields exist in Google, and they don't quite communicate because the platforms do not have one-to-one fields exactly. They don't have an exact match. And that's okay. Most of the time, you're looking for the main information that does sync, and that includes email addresses on contact records, subjects and descriptions, start dates and end times when it comes to activities, all of that pertinent information in an activity or a contact. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. How do we turn this tool on? Or first of all, how much is this? Well, the good news is this tool is free, so there's no cost to turning this on or using the sync. There's no extra charge. This is a free tool to anyone who subscribes to the Redtail CRM. So all you have to have is a login to the CRM. And when you're logged in, to turn this tool on, you're going to go to your name in the top right-hand corner and manage your integrations. Manage your integrations is where all of your integrations can be found. These are usually there are other companies that Redtail integrates with, so you likely have to have a subscription or a service with one of these other companies. But when it comes to Retriever Cloud, this is a tool that we've went ahead and built, so it's listed under our Retriever Cloud. And if it's not turned on, if you don't see it here, then go ahead and go all the way up to your disabled integrations, and you can then toggle on any integration that's turned off. So if Retriever Cloud was turned off, you could turn it on here, and then go back to enabled, scroll down to R, and then you would be able to see the Retriever Cloud. So now that it's on, that's step one. Step two is I'm going to go to the settings wheel and click on settings. Now settings is going to be where you can turn most integrations on or off. We do call our integrations snowflakes because they do tend to all be very unique in their setup process and how they work. And when it comes to this one, you're going to go to settings, and the very first thing that you have to do is choose to sync a tag group. A tag group is a list in Redtail of contacts that may or may not have anything in common. So they don't all have to have the same status or the same category. You could find them by searching, but ultimately these contacts are manually added to the tag group, and then they would have to be manually removed from the tag group if you no longer wanted them to sync. But it's a static list right here, and you can choose any of these tag groups. You can see I've created a Retriever Cloud sync group. I would recommend doing that, especially when you're in an office sharing with 5, 10, 15 other people or more. You're going to want to create a specific tag group for the Retriever Cloud sync so that anyone going through the tag groups will know that that's an important one and not to delete it, because we do want to keep that group within the integration so the contacts can continue to sync. So I would name it something along the lines of Retriever Cloud sync group. And once you've selected it, we've got two options, kind of a fork in the road. Do I want to enable the contact and calendar sync with Office 365? Or do I want to enable the contact and calendar sync with Google? Well, I'm all about that Google sync. So today we're going to click on Enable Google Sync. So it's going to redirect me to my Google login here. And now I can put in my Gmail address. So likely this is at gmail.com. You might have your own domain hosted with Google, in which case you're going to put in your email address and then whatever your domain is. But if it's just a Gmail address, you can put in just the first part, or you can type out the whole portion of it. And then click Next. It's going to then ask you for your password. We're going to fill in our password. And it's just as easy as that. So now that it's all connected, it's going to ask us to grant Retriever Cloud permission. So I'm going to go ahead and allow permission. It's going to see, edit, share, permanently delete calendars. You can access, allow. We're going to allow that as well. And then we're going to confirm our choices. So we do want it to be able to affect the calendar and affect the contacts because we want that sync to happen. Essentially, it's asking, do you want to give this program permission to sync, meaning adding, editing, and deleting information that it's bringing over. So we are going to go ahead and allow that. Now, something to point out at this point is that it doesn't go to your default Google Calendar or your default Google contacts. So we're not deleting information. Nothing is ever lost in this sync. We're merely adding a new folder to your calendar. So I'm going to bring up my Google Calendar here. Okay, so now you'll see over here on the left-hand side, I've got my Redtail calendar created today when I synced, and then I have my default Redtail University calendar that is the default on this email address. So if I uncheck both calendars and just check my Redtail University. I don't have anything on my default calendar, and that's okay. If you do have anything on this calendar, just know that it will not sync back to Redtail. This is bringing all of the calendar events in Redtail and syncing them to the Redtail folder that it's created here. So now I can see all of my Redtail CRM appointments for this week on the Google Calendar. So if I go back to my Redtail calendar here, got all of these appointments, call about funding an IRA, meeting to discuss accounts, meeting over here. Then if I go back to the Google Calendar, here's my call about funding the IRA, meeting to discuss, and a meeting here. So it's just bringing from the Redtail CRM to this new folder over here on the left. And then it does the same thing with contacts. So now that I have this Redtail folder in my calendar, I can add appointments to my Google Calendar for whatever date and time or appointment that I have. On September 10th, 1 p.m., I have a meeting. So that appointment is then going to sync back over to the Redtail CRM. I'm going to go back to my Redtail calendar, give it a refresh here, and the sync will then allow that calendar appointment to show. So I didn't have a meeting there previously, but now I do. And I'll just do that one more time. Meeting with David. Save that 2 to 3 p.m. on the 10th. Come back over here. There's no appointment 2 to 3 today. We're going to give it a quick refresh. And there's that meeting. So it's going to sync back over. Now, most of the time, the sync is going to happen, I would say, under 5 minutes within a 5-minute time frame. The only time you're going to see a longer sync is when you're initially setting up the calendar, perhaps, or when a lot of appointments have been added all at once and it takes some time for it to sync through all of those new appointments. All right, so that's pretty much the calendar sync. You can see that setting it up wasn't very difficult at all. It just consisted of going into the Redtail CRM, going to the integrations page, and then putting in the Google login information. So after that, the sync will be turned on going forward. There's no maintenance. There's no extra steps you have to go through every day. Once it's set up, it will just keep running in the background whenever you add a new appointment or edit an appointment. But let's break it down into the specifics. So, what syncs when it comes to contacts? First and foremost, the contacts have to be in a tag group within Redtail in order to make it to the Google Contacts group. If the contact is not in a tag group in Redtail, there is no way for that contact to sync to the Google Contacts. It has to be within that selected tag group. At this time, you can only select one tag group. So if you have more than one tag group that you would like to sync, then you would want to consolidate those within the CRM by adding all 3 of those tag groups, or all however many tag groups there are, into one single tag group. That would be the sync tag group. The second most important thing to remember is that it creates a Redtail contacts folder. So if you have existing contacts in your Gmail account, there will be duplication. There will be the contacts that were in the original folder that you had, and then there will be the Redtail contacts. Going forward, you would want to maintain and select to view and email or correspond with and update the ones in the Redtail folder. So you may see some duplication. Likely there are going to be a lot of contacts in your Gmail folder that are created just from email addresses or correspondences. So in order to prevent those contacts from creating a bunch of records in your CRM, we went ahead and created our own contacts folder that the Redtail contacts go to. But you can add to that Redtail contacts folder, and those contacts will sync back to the CRM and create new records. So it's a nice, easy way to create a contact record. Second, new contacts added in Google, so I just covered that one. And then permissioned contacts. So for those of you in databases where there are multiple advisors and we have permissions in play, I do want to let you know that permissioned contacts do sync if you have permission to view them. If you do not have permission to see a contact, even if it is in the tag group that you select, it will not sync to your Google contacts. So just as if the contact doesn't exist for you in Redtail, it will not sync to your Google Calendar or Google Contacts either. So just to break that down for you, if you have 5 advisors and each one has permission to see only their own contacts, you can create a single tag group to sync called Retriever Cloud Sync Tag Group and add all of their contacts to it. But if one of those advisors sets up the Google Sync, they will only get their own contacts that they are permissioned to view. That way you don't have to have a Retriever Cloud Sync tag group for Jonathan, one for Haley, one for Rick, one for Curtis. Instead, you can have one group for everybody, and the system will not give anyone permission to contacts that they did not have permission to see within the CRM. And then here I just wanted to show you an excerpt from our documentation on the Redtail Google Sync. So when you're creating contacts, they can be created within Redtail or within Google, and it will sync either way. That's what we're letting you know here. When you update information in Redtail and Google, it does sync both ways, but we do have a note over here that says if the contact is being updated, or if the contact being updated has been deleted from Google, then we will recreate the contact in Google. So that brings us to the last note here, where if the operation is deleting, it has to be deleted from Redtail. So when it comes to this sync, one program ultimately has to be in charge so that there's not a confusion between the programs that could create a bunch of duplication. So for example, if one program misread that the other program had a bunch of contacts or didn't have those contacts, it would try and resend those over, and then we'd have duplication. So in order to prevent that, anything that's being deleted must be deleted from the Redtail side. So if you're deleting an email address, or if you're deleting any part of the contact record, you're going to delete it from within Redtail. Now, most of this can also be accessed from the Redtail mobile app. So you can log in the mobile app, update the contact record from there, and then it will sync back to your Google contacts, which would also be on your phone in your contacts folder. And then if you're full on deleting a contact altogether, it would have to be deleted from Redtail, and then it will sync that deletion. In other words, it will remove that contact from Google as well. But if you do delete that record in Google, it will sync back from Redtail. That's all we're saying here. And then as far as the calendar goes, some of this might be similar to the contacts, but with the calendar, new and existing activities will sync on the initial sync. And for that, the time period that it syncs is from today, 1 year into the past and 1 year into the future. So whenever you turn it on, 1 year into the past of activities and 1 year into the future of activities will sync over. And then from there, any activities that are created or edited will then sync over from Redtail to that Google Calendar. As far as repeating activities go, most repeating activities do sync from Redtail to the Google Calendar. There are some specific instances that don't. If you have any trouble with that, I would just recommend reaching out to our support team, but the vast majority of the repeating activities will. It just comes down to very specific recurrence patterns that don't translate well. So if you see anything that's not translating, just give us a call. We'll be able to work through it with you guys. And then it does create that separate Redtail calendar in the Google Calendar. So you can move any existing activities from another Google Calendar onto the Redtail Google Calendar, and then those will then sync back to Redtail. And just like permissions on contact records, within Redtail, you have the ability to set a privacy option on your calendar activities. Those privacy options from Redtail do carry over to your Google Calendar. So if you're syncing an activity that you don't have permission to view or you only have limited permissions to, it will sync only limited data depending on what you are allowed to see on that activity. Now, on that front, I do want to point out that if you have a bunch of users in an office and you all want to share your Google calendars. If you sync your own Redtail calendar to your own Google calendar and then share that Google calendar doesn't have permissions. So if I mark an activity private in Redtail and then sync it to my Google and then share my Google, my coworkers would be able to see that Google appointment. So keep that in mind when it comes to whether an activity is private or public. And any questions on that specific scenario, always reach out to our support team and we'll be able to help with the specific questions. And then I do want to also mention that all activity types sync. So regardless of the activity type being phone call, appointment, task, unassigned, or one of your custom types, all of those activity types sync to the Google Calendar. If they're all-day activities or timed, it doesn't matter. Any activity on the Redtail calendar will sync to the Google Calendar. And then here's the same breakdown for the calendar. Anything that's created in either Redtail or Google will sync to the other program. Anything that's updated will sync to the other program. And then just like the contacts, as far as deleting goes, Redtail is going to be in charge. So you would have to log into the Redtail CRM in order to delete an activity or delete any information for it to sync to Google then. One of the main benefits of syncing your Redtail calendar with your Google account is that now your calendar is going to be on that Gmail address. And if your calendar is on that Gmail address, you can sync the calendar to your phone. Essentially, we're getting your Redtail calendar all the way down to your mobile device on the native calendar app on your mobile device. So for you, that might be an Android, it might be an Apple device, an iPhone, whatever it is. There's one of two options. There's going to be your Apple Calendar app, or there's going to be your Google Calendar app over here. So either way, you're going to have the Apple Calendar or your Google Calendar on whatever phone it is. But first, you have to set up the email address onto the phone. In your device, you're going to go to the Settings app, and then you're going to scroll down to where it says Passwords and Accounts. That's what we're going to click on, Passwords and Accounts. And here you can start to set up an email address. Ours is a Google address, so we're going to add a new Google account. And then we're going to go ahead and type in our email address information. So first it's going to need your username, which is your email address, and then it's going to ask for your password to authenticate the account and sync all of the emails and also the calendar and the contacts onto this phone. Click next, we're going to give our password. And then that's it. There's not any complicated settings for a Google account. It doesn't ask for incoming server, outgoing server, anything like that, just your username and password. And then here we have options for mail, contacts, calendar, and notes. Now, if you already have the device set, or if you already have the email address set up on your device, then you're not going to need to put in your email address and password again. Instead, you're just going to go to the accounts page and then click on the appropriate account that it is. Now with this email account, I actually don't use the email account very much, so I'm just going to unselect mail, then my contacts and calendar can still sync. So if you're saying to yourself, no, at this point I only want my calendar to sync, then you can unselect contacts. And vice versa, if you only want your contacts to sync, then you're going to unselect that calendar. So I'm going to leave them both selected and save. And that's it. The account has been added to my phone. So now I can go into the native calendar application here and click on my available calendars down at the bottom. So that's down here. When we click on it, it's going to bring up every single calendar under every single email account that I have. And you might notice we're not seeing our Gmail account here yet. So it hasn't synced through yet. That's because when an email account syncs to your phone, it syncs the contacts first. So let's instead go into our contacts and we'll go to groups and we will only select our new Redtail University at gmail.com contacts. So that's very down here at the bottom. It's got our email address and then it's syncing all of our contacts. And there you go. You can see they already synced up. Actually, we didn't get here quick enough to see them loading. Instead, we've got Bilbo Baggins, Rocky Balboa, Shirley Bennett, all of our Redtail contacts have synced to this phone at this time. So now I can call them, I can add a contact on my mobile device, and as long as I'm adding it to the email address group, the email address Redtail group, then that's going to sync back to the Redtail CRM. So we're going to go ahead and add Malcolm Mandrup. That's whose picture's on the back of my phone here, Redtail Malcolm. And that contact record will sync back to the Redtail CRM because it was added to the Gmail account. Now let's go back and check on our calendar and see if our calendar has shown up. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Redtail calendar, and once that's selected, I'm going to be able to, oh, there they are. There's all my Redtail calendar activities syncing through the Google account all the way down to my phone. And then I can add a calendar activity here for Friday, say, check on calendar syncing. So we're just going to do a double check and all day activity on our calendar syncing and add that activity. So now that activity is going to sync back to the Google account and subsequently sync back to the Redtail CRM as well. And that is Retriever Cloud for Google in a nutshell. So I really encourage everyone to just set this up if you have a Google address. If you have an Outlook 365 hosted email account or a Microsoft Exchange hosted email account, then it's going to be better to set up Retriever Cloud for 365 or Exchange instead of the Google platform. But if you don't have an Outlook hosted email or Microsoft, then Google will definitely be the way to go. And if you don't have an email address hosted by Google, Outlook 365, or Microsoft Exchange, that's okay too. Maybe you have a broker-dealer hosted email address or some other third-party company. Keep in mind that Google does have free Gmail accounts. So at the very, very, very last resort, you could create a free Google email address. Always consult with your you always consult with your compliance department, of course, but you could create a free Google or Gmail address in order to sync the calendar to a shared Google calendar that you could then view on mobile devices or share with other people in the office. So on that note, one last thing that I'll mention is the Redtail mobile app. If you're still wondering about how to view your calendar on your phone and not quite sure about the sync, we do have a mobile app that you can log into and view your calendar and edit your appointments and your activities from within that mobile app as well.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.